Right now I'm going to read from my first collection of articles called Mandela Was Late. This article is about why I hate travel. It's a little early to call it a trend, but when admitting that I hate travel, people seem slower to write me off as a listless slug. With more conversation, I could usually bring them around to that point of view, but anyway, 10 years ago, admitting that you hated travel branded you under some dullard's version of Megan's Law. People's body language suddenly spoke fluent English. You hate travel? You hate travel? You hate travel? Yes, yes, and yes. But times are changing. People seem more tolerant of inertia freaks like me. Not long ago at a super high thread count dinner party in Martha's Vineyard, okay, I went to Martha's Vineyard. I'll explain later. A woman said to me, I like travel, but sometimes it's like marriage. Not all it's cracked up to be. I said I didn't know either were cracked up to be much, and she smiled. No, really, I'm pretty sure she smiled. Reasons for the backlash against travel are everywhere. Pandemics, pollution, security gate shoe removal. Can you believe that one? One wacko booby traps his Nikes and we have to remove our shoes for eternity. I mean, it's sick. That's why I feel that getting there is half the agony. But my travel problem is more internal. I'm an aspiring agoraphobic. I like being home. The sweet habit of home is where life's potential is. I'm pretty sure news about an option screenplay won't reach me in Tuscany. It doesn't reach me in Santa Monica either, but at least here, self-delusion makes sense. Other people may like being in the middle of nowhere, not me. And my atlas shows maybe 4 places in the whole world that aren't in the middle of nowhere. And yet people continue to ask, what about daring adventure? Well, when wars break out, I do envy those action junkie photojournalists snapping away through sniper fire, then hurtling headlong into desperate combat romances. But those aren't the kind of adventures we're talking about here. And anyway, as Eudora Welty said, all serious daring starts from within. Granted, just because Eudora Welty said it doesn't mean it's true, but in this case, I really think she was onto something. People also ask about the oxymoronic concept of a pleasure trip. Here the implications are twofold. A, home lacks pleasure, and B, a change of scenery does a person good. In Normandy, okay, I went to Normandy. I'll explain that later too. I learned that the French refer to such travel as a way to change les idées. Change your ideas. Granted, just because the French say it doesn't mean it's wrong. But in this case, I really think they're wrong. Case in point, a few years ago, fleets of LA's yoga demons lugged their purple mats to India precisely to change les idées. I was asked along on several trips but declined. India is no doubt fascinating, and the people sound very nice over the phone. But thanks for asking and Godspeed. As it turned out, the only changes in ideas I heard from returning travelers dealt with multiplying the recommended dosage of Imodium. The best idea was an advanced formula called Explodium. On the upside, I learned enough about India to convince myself that I'd gone there and never needed to go back. One imagined trip was enough. Really, it's staggering how much you can learn about the world by avoiding it. Without moving a muscle, I know St. Bart's is so restful, and Machu Picchu is so transcendent, and the Maasai are so cheerful. I don't see why I have to confirm it all firsthand. You've rated the hotels, reviewed the meals, described the felonious cab drivers. Why see the movie? Which exposes another dimly lit truth. The high point of any trip is when it's over. People like traveling, but they love saying, "I just got back from Uruguay." With open access to exotic locales, travel has become a seedy form of exhibitionism, more something to recount than experience. I know this because I'm as guilty as anyone. A few years ago, I went on what others referred to as a vacation to Vietnam. Okay, I went to Vietnam. I'll explain later. They asked how I enjoy the trip, and I'd say, actually, I don't know what all those Vietnam veterans were talking about. I had a great time. I suddenly felt like an intriguing person. Really, if I could just say stuff like that without bothering to go anywhere, travel could become a real passion for me. As evidence from the mentions of Martha's Vineyard, Normandy, and Vietnam, I do travel some. In recent years, I've also been to Norway, Denmark, Israel, a slew of ski resorts, and Syracuse in February. And just before it became a museum piece, I took the Concorde to Paris. I think that's pretty much... No, wait, I've also taken a few trips to Mexico. Ooh, idea for a resort in Afghanistan. Cabo San Lucas. I like it. So yes, hating travel doesn't necessarily preclude it. In fact, Martha's Vineyard was part of an effort to hate travel a little less. In fact, I bought a little home there. Without getting too deeply into it, at the point of purchase, I hadn't seen the house, nor had I ever been to Martha's Vineyard, a place that seemed a long way to go to see the same people I can see dining at Giorgio's in Santa Monica every night. Yet the idea of a vacation home sounded like a way to be home and away at the same time. On my first visit, it was almost exactly like being home. Meandering days, dinner with friends at night. By the fifth dinner party, I was starting to run a little low on personality, but overall, the whole trip wasn't overtly horrific. And I got to tell people, hey, I just got back from Martha's Vineyard. As for other trips, honestly, I'm not totally sure how they happened. If I had to pinpoint something, I'd say that what gets me on the plane most often is sheer stupidity. Stupidity and inexplicable lapses in self-awareness. I commit to trips far in advance when they're not quite real, when it's not me going so much as some future me. Let me of the future worry about Oslo. Most places have an appeal from a distance of 6 months, and until the flights are booked, it's all theory anyway. But still, the week before a trip does come is like imminent death for me. Home will still be here, I'll be gone. My last trip to Starbucks before a trip feels like my last trip to Starbucks for life. But a commitment's a commitment, so after waiting until the last second to book the trip in the hope that the State Department will suddenly declare Paris unsafe for Americans, I pay the maximum possible airfare, assuming that survival is included in the price. Once at the destination, I often experience a dram of dissociative pleasure. Wow, you're actually in Saigon. This wonder is a gateway drug, leading to a breakfast of quail eggs and some day trip on a hydrofoil or a 6-seat crop duster. That's when I snap back to being me, silently chanting, I'd rather be anywhere else in the world right now. Anywhere. Atlantic City, Houston, a Knicks game, walking through Baghdad wearing a yarmulke. Chastened, the rest of the trip is devoted to running out the clock, a passport-hugging vigil of bland meals, prepaid taxis, and yearning phone calls to my home planet. On returning to LAX, I feel like a freed hostage walking off the plane on boneless legs. I'm primed to kiss American soil. Luckily, we land on tarmac, so I don't have to kiss the soil. Instead, I swear to never go anywhere again, to be nostalgic for my home life as I live it. In the cab ride home, the question, why travel, rivals the question, is there a God? Such a mystery, this desire to budge. Back home, a brochure from the World Wildlife Fund touts a 2-week voyage of discovery to the Galapagos Islands. I toss it in the recycle bin thinking, well, maybe if they run an eco tour of Westwood.